Oh, well, hello and good afternoon. Welcome to our Ontario Network of CAPC CPNP projects webinar presentation. My name is Sydney Bell. I'm the network program lead, and I'm really happy to welcome you here. And I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Drew from Dad Central. And before we welcome him to share his presentation, I want to begin our event today by taking a moment to acknowledge the land and those who are the traditional caretakers. We come together here today from many places across Ontario, and wherever we are, we're on the traditional territories of Indigenous people, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Cree, Métis, and others who have cared for the land for thousands of years. We acknowledge and feel grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and connect on these lands and recognize the deep and ongoing impacts of colonialism, especially in those systems where we work, the ones that shape the lives of children and families and communities. So, as we come together in work supporting those families, we're committed to listening, learning, and taking actions toward equity, reconciliation, and stronger relationships with Indigenous communities. Um, we are coming up upon Orange Shirt Day and Truth and Reconciliation Day next week. And to support our work in reflection on these areas, I will share a link in the chat to our network truth and reconciliation discussion guide, and hoping that will be a resource for us all. So with that, I'm really pleased to once again welcome Drew Soleyn as a speaker to our community here to talk to us about the biggest mistake organizations make when engaging fathers and how to fix it. So over to you, Drew.
Great. Thank you so much, Sydney. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate the opportunity just to share on this topic. And hopefully, my main goal is to add some value to you and something that you can take away and implement right away in your context, whatever that might be. And which kind of leads me to the next part of this. I'd love to get a sense of where people are. We're blessed to, be throughout this country sometimes on these webinars, and I'd just love to get a sense. So if you can go ahead and put in the chat where you are as I try and get my chat open so I can see the responses. All these things all over my screen. We'd love to, again, just get a sense of where. So we got Ellen in Windsor. Awesome. Welcome, Ellen. Jacqueline in Kitchener. Welcome. Jane in Lanark. Hannah in Hamilton. Michael in Barrie. Mostly Ontario. All right. Red Lake, Tammy. Great. Awesome. Jen in Hamilton. Welcome, welcome. So it's always for me fascinating, with technology, which is sometimes a blessing and sometimes a curse. The cool opportunity to connect with people all over the place. And so thank you for taking time out of your day to join for this topic. And, my main goal is to ensure that you, as I said, leave with something that you can apply right away. Hopefully, there's some knowledge or some information that is new or relevant that you can say, oh, okay, I can see this and it can be effective for me. So that's really the goal as I see more people. Red Rock, Ontario, Sarah, Jacqueline from Mississauga. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate that. And so maybe just some housekeeping. Love to keep the chat going throughout. If there's something that I share or some information that put some comments in there. I'd love to see it and share and support each other. The other thing is, if you have questions, Sydney, I don't know if we talked about this, but would you help me out by maybe collating some of these questions so that at the end I can be able to address them for anyone who's got some questions throughout the. So if it comes up, put it in the chat. Would you be able to help with that, Sydney?
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
Feel free.
Okay,
I mean, yes, indeed.
awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay. Um, and so we're talking about the biggest mistake organizations make when engaging fathers. And so before we get to that big value, I want to encourage you to stick
Um,
with me
I don't know
throughout
about
this.
anybody else, but
The
I'm no
goal,
longer able to hear Drew.
oh, you can't hear
You
me.
suddenly cut out.
I can hear
Hmm.
you.
Is that,
Tammy, can you hear
We
me?
can
are
hear
Okay,
you
you.
thank
me?
you.
Oh, it's
You
just on
can all
my
hear me?
end. It's
Okay.
not good.
Okay. Everyone can hear me. I'm sorry, Sydney, you can't hear me.
I don't know what's happened. I apologize for the interruption, Drew. Keep going, but I'm going to work at
Okay.
trying to hear
No
you.
problem at all.
So,
But thank you for your help. Okay.
okay.
So, um, let's see where we're at. We got, as I said, we're going to be focusing on this, and I want to give you some practical things you can do built off of if you find yourself possibly in this situation where you may have made this mistake in the past. And the goal is, I want you to stick with me because I also have an offer to go beyond just today. There's only so much we can cover in the short period of time we have, and so I don't want to leave you with, okay, great, you've given me some of this information, but like, how do I go forward and what's next? And so at the end, I want to talk briefly about how I feel like what we've got in terms of additional resources to help you go beyond just today and apply this to your specific settings. So, just to get the most out of, I think we're on our next slide here. So we did this already, just to welcome people again, to thank you. Talked about including any questions. Um, as I said at the end, I want to provide a special offer for all who attend and stay to really help you go beyond just what we're addressing today. So before we start, a couple quick things to set yourself up for success. You know, sometimes I've been on these things and you see people, they've got their phone, which is great because we can do it, but then they're walking around and you know, it's like, can you really be paying attention if you're walking around or if you're in a car doing some things? Obviously, if that's the way you're here, I'm happy to have you here. But the best bet is to be as stationary as you can through these sessions. Ideally, take some notes. Many of us have our AI note takers, or sometimes we traditional pen and paper. I encourage you to do that. And then, of course, just try and minimize any distractions so that you can get the most both for yourself, but also stay engaged with other participants who are here. Um, okay, so really, I want to get a little bit of background about myself. I'm a dad, as you can see. I'm blessed to have this as our family right now. Actually, this was just my daughter's birthday, Sophia. She's just behind me in my left shoulder on August 29th. We all went out for breakfast, so it was a really wonderful time. But you know, fatherhood has been challenging for me. You know, I had a traumatic childhood, especially related to my father. And you know, even entering fatherhood, I was blessed to start with twins. So it wasn't just one child; it was two, and there was a lot going on. You know, all that to say is that you know, even with the wonderful resources and supports that I've had around me throughout my fatherhood journey, um, I can say that it's still been quite challenging. And I know there are many families and fathers that you may serve that have had, you know, harder circumstances than I have, and maybe not with the resources. But what I can say I've learned in this process is that every single one of the fathers that I've connected with or served, they have a similar passion that I have, and that's just to be the best dad that we can be, to be able to ensure that our family and our children get actually hopefully more successful than we can be and overcome some of the challenges maybe we find ourselves stuck in. So I just want to share that, you know, personally, that's been my passion and why I feel fortunate and blessed to be able to do this work. You know, professionally, I've worked I'm an ICF certified coach just by the International Coaching Federation, and I've been blessed to support Dad Central in this role since 2019, and where we worked with the Public Health Agency of Canada and really you know, dug into some research back in 2019 and 2020 that's really been the foundation of how I've tried to help provide more content and more of our training built off of what we'd already been doing. And so that's just a little bit about me and I guess my connection to fatherhood, my experiences with Dad Central, and some of the content that we're bringing to you today. Um, so you know, the way that we're gonna structure it, I think, before we get into it, I'd love to actually hear from you either in the chat or you can come off mute and comment. But you know, if you were, let's say, a year from now, and you could imagine, you know, the best outcome when it came to this topic of engaging or supporting fathers, um, to be engaged, like, can you, what would that look like for you? If you can imagine that outcome, I want you to begin again. Go ahead, share if you can in the chat. And even if you don't share, I'd love for you to get a clear picture in your mind. Okay, so a year from now, if I've got fathers fully engaged and I see more fathers in my programs and we're doing the things we want to do, what would that exactly look like? But then also, what would that feel like for you or for your organization? So if you shared, great. If you didn't, just keep that picture in handy as we're going through this. And the way that I'm going to approach it today is that in working with organizations and in seeing, the fantastic things that are being done in the way that we're trying to serve your communities, we've run into some, I'd say, common questions that come up, or maybe some of them are explicitly stated and some of them are maybe more implicit and kind of more of your wondering that you don't actually bring forward. So that's how I'm going to approach it this way. I think there's three common questions that I've encountered over the time, and I want to try and put those to the surface and give you some content that maybe answers those questions for you. Okay. Give me a like a why if you're with me still, or give me a no if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about or what value you might get out of it today. Just to
Well,
see. So
Drew,
you got
I
yeah,
want to let you know that I am with you and I've been hearing you again. So
gotcha.
the Zoom diverted to my earbuds. So
Okay.
you're not alone.
It's the
And yes,
blessing
I'm
of
seeing
technology. Multiple ways
that's
to hear
right.
me.
That's right.
Nice. Awesome.
And I'm seeing
Oh,
some comments in the
yeah.
chat.
Yeah. I love it. Actually, let's before we get moving, I'd love to bring these. So fathers that feel comfortable engaging with other parents and facilitators. I'm going to infer that if fathers do enter or come into your facility, that they appear uncomfortable or they're explicitly actually stating, I don't really feel comfortable. So you want to shift that experience. That's an awesome vision. I love that. A more active participation with dads, guiding leading initiatives and programs for dads in partnership with us. Okay. So not only dads there, but dads maybe being more actively involved, as well as in saying, hey, I want to take the initiative. How can I help? Or what can I do here to support what's already going on? Love that. That's great. Um, See more engagement from fathers as a whole. Okay. Very little interaction with them. My program could benefit from seeing an increase of participation from fathers, and as a result, the impact it would have on the children. Yeah, I love that. That last part, the impact it would have on the children. I think that's primarily been what Dad Central has focused on for the years and years and years. This is really about what the research is unequivocally showing about when fathers are positively involved in the life of a child, the difference it makes for them. Okay. Yeah, these are great. Thank you so much. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving on, but maybe we can come back and address some of those after. So love it. I think those are great things to look for. So in addressing it, we're going to start by this number one mistake, framed in the form of a question that often comes up. We're going to understand the fathering context and what influences dads. And this is really going to be grounded in the research, some of that research we did in 2019, 2020, plus a few others. And then what I believe is practical. It may not be groundbreaking. It may not be anything you didn't already know, but I think some practical guidance to help support that so you can take away. So the first question, and we had a recent call with an organization and we were talking through, and they even have a male facilitator. And so the sense that I got is they were quite frustrated. And this question really stood out. Is like we're doing all these things, Drew. Like we're you're telling me this is important and these are best for, but like we're doing that, but it's still not working. And so the question I think we hear is, why is it that no matter what we try, and we're trying a lot, we're working hard, dads just don't seem to show up or stay engaged? Give me I don't know if you can give a hand emoji or whatever. Give me a hands up if that question or that might resonate with you. If it does, great. If not, well, you're going to learn a little bit more about some of the organizations who do. So the way I'm going to start this is, sorry, I just got to move things around here, is that this is one of the biggest frustrations we hear. You've tried the invitations, you've tried the flyers, you've tried even one-on-one outreach, which we think is one of the best ways to do it, and still the response is underwhelming. And so it's easy to conclude that they just don't want to be involved. But the truth is that it's not that dads don't care, it's that maybe you've been missing a crucial piece. And that sometimes this is what happens is that you've designed programs that are based on what you think dads want, as opposed to actually hearing from dads, or what works for moms and just adapted. And so you know, when working with dads, really the best way to go about this is that it's about learning to be much more descriptive of fatherhood, not prescriptive. I'm going to talk more about that, but it's also really helping dads discover the six roles that every father can play, roles that fathers may not fully understand and how important they are. And it's the underlying piece to this, especially being descriptive versus prescriptive, is taking a strengths-based approach. I know many are going to be like, well, hey, that's exactly what we do, right? But I want to use this analogy to maybe anchor this. So strengths-based looks at, it means serving more as a guide, not as a director. And so I want you to think of this compass that you hear on the screen. It helps hikers find their way, but it doesn't tell them every step. In the same way, as practitioners, we can guide dads to discover their strengths and navigate fatherhood in their own context, as opposed to the context that we think of it in the way that we want to tell them to. And so, this is the core principle of being descriptive versus prescriptive. And what do we mean by that? Is so descriptive, it offers principles and ideas that dads can reflect on and then begin applying in their own way. Whereas prescriptive means telling dads exactly what they must do to be, quote, good dads. They've got checklists, they've got demands that they've got to meet, they've got comparisons to, well, here, this is what a good dad does, and here's what you're not doing. So, why this is important is because prescribing, it disempowers dads and often leaves them feeling like they don't measure up. And one of the things we know from research, which I think I have in a later slide, but I'll mention it here, is that dads really struggle with feeling like they have the skills, and this is the core, the confidence to actually parent the way they want to. And so when we start telling them you've got to meet this prescriptive measure, then it's like, well, I'm short, I'm not going to measure up. Right. And so, whereas when you describe, hey, kids need this, and here's what will help them feel engaged and supported by you. How do you think you could do that? It really begins to empower dads to find the solutions or to find ways that they can actually meet the children's needs. And so that's and again another analogy. So prescribing is like giving a GPS instead of a compass, right? And so dads become dependent. Any of you, you know, we used to be able to, hey, here's the address. You kind of figure out how to get there. Does anybody ever go anywhere without using their GPS? Like how to get there, especially if you've never been there? I mean, it's comical, but there are some people who, if they didn't have their GPS telling them how to get back almost to their house, some of us might struggle to actually get back there. You know, that's actually disempowering. Like you actually have the ability to remember routes or how about this, phone numbers, right? You just call so and so, you don't even know their phone number anymore, right? It's funny. Kristen was asked for, oh, do you have Drew's phone? Kristen's my partner. She's like, do you have Drew's phone number? And she couldn't remember it. It's kind of funny, but this is kind of the idea of the prescriptive, right? Empowerment really comes from dads discover their own path. And so I don't want to beat this that horse, but I think that those examples really reinforce that point. We stay descriptive by focusing on the strengths the dads have and on what the children need. Then asking open-ended questions that help dads decide how they're going to meet those needs for their child. And so when we say children's needs, these are the roles, and this is how we tend to communicate with fathers to help them recognize and work on this. So children ultimately, and this is both mom and dad can provide all these things, but children, they need provision, they need interaction, they need nurturing, they need affection, they need responsibility, and they need commitment. And so those needs can be met in different ways, and it doesn't have to be a split 50-50. It's like dad does three, mom does three, or even you split each of these perfectly 50-50. The point is just fathers need to know what their children need and then help them discover how they can do that. So nurturing in particular is not just for moms. Dads can learn it too, but there may be default, moms tend to be more nurturing and dads tend to be more, let's say, adventure and risk taking. And that's fine, but those are strengths. You can still both do those types of things. So how do we help dads apply this? Really, you want to encourage dads to know their children. What's your child's favorite book? What does your child like to eat? What's their favorite game? Where do you see them get most excited when you hang out with them? When you do have time with them, if you're not with them all the time, where do you see them, gravitating towards? What's something that they're interested in? The more you help them by asking these questions, they're beginning to discover about their child, the more that they can begin saying, "Oh, okay, this is good." So you want to support dads in meeting their child's needs in the way that works for them. So almost helping them, as Dr. Lamar Markham says, it's you don't want to solve the problem for them. You want to help them problem solve together. Okay, so what's one way you could do that? Or what's one way you could help or spend some time with your child doing something they like? That approach really leads to the greatest success for fathers' ability to identify and self-actualize, hey, I can do this, as well as them to come up with solutions and taking action. Okay. I still know, Sydney, you still know your best friend's phone number from when you were a kid. Yeah, that was before we had the cheat sheets. I still remember my student number from when I was in my undergraduate at Western. So I'm going to claim, it's
Same.
good to remember these things, you know?
Same.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So the next question. Oh no, sorry. I want to reinforce it just with, and I think that most people are aware of this, but I'll just remind why is this so important is because of these insights around child development and the outcomes when fathers are positively involved. Children obviously benefit cognitive, emotional, social, physical, and then moms benefit too, and fathers benefit. And these are part of the infographics that we developed based off of the research in partnership with the Public Health Agency of Canada. So I know they're not going to be on screen long, but I'm happy to share the slides afterwards so you can take a look at that. The other question that often gets asked, which maybe piggybacks off the first one, is what are dad's perspectives? And maybe the other one is, will they come to our program facility? Some of you already see this, that they are there, and some of you, may be gathering insight and about each of them, and that's great. But if you're not, um, I think the goal here is that we want to be able to understand. So we're going to share some of this research. So, quick question, your answers in the chat. How do you think Canadian dads view their role? In the backyard, Tammy says. I'm going to infer that's about play and joke time and having fun. View themselves as providing guidance, provider. Yeah. Many dads view their role as the financial provider. Yeah, that's absolutely traditional. Provider, more as a supporting or secondary role. Okay, interesting, Michael. Help support their kids to give them the best start in life, probably as a provider to the family. Boundary setting, the fun one. Yeah, play is actually a dad's superpower. I'm gonna lean into that strength 100%. Yes, absolutely the fun one. Moms can be fun too, though. So, awesome. Okay, that's great. Well, all of these I think make sense. The tradition, some are very traditional and some are, but I mean, in the research, what we really found is that if you were just a bottom line simple statement is that dads actually care about their father role and they want to be involved, supportive parents. The gap comes in, I think, those three areas, which is the skills and confidence to feel like they can actually engage with their kids in the way that supports them, feeling like they have the ability to balance the different demands that are coming at them in life, and then the financial and social resources to be able to provide a caring, stable home. So those are some of the challenges, but here's another quote from research that was done in the province of Quebec. I think over 400 English-speaking fathers, and this was the results of it. So, watching one's children grow, develop, and learn, as well as seeing one's children succeed and confront challenges, are by a wide margin the two primary vectors for satisfaction relating to paternity. It's kind of wordy there, but the point is that when dads see their kids growing, developing, changing, and overcoming challenges or meeting challenges head on and showing characteristics that really they see that, hey, they can be successful. That's when dads feel like, oh man, that's what being a dad is like. I'm helping my kid overcome these challenges. And that really where they get excited about it. So, um, here's the three areas that I talked about. When fathers are supported in any one of these three areas, we tend to see more engagement and more willingness to work through some of the hard, uncomfortable, maybe the areas that they have never had any exposure or experience with in their own lives or with their own fathers or father figures. And so, why do we say this? Because from the research, if you can meet a father or support a father in any one of these three areas, you're going to help support them become more positively involved. And so, and many of you might offer workshops or play groups or other experiences where fathers can develop and learn and develop skills which ultimately then comes and builds some of their confidence. Some of you may also be able to help produce solutions or provide opportunities that takes some of the pressure, we'll say, where they can balance both work and home. And these may or may not fall into your organization's mandate, but also helping fathers with financial or social resources. One of the things we hear from dads a lot is they want to connect with other dads. And so sometimes creating a space where fathers can just connect with other fathers sort of organically, it can be a tremendous value to that because then there's that social support. There's a, hey, I'm not alone in this. There's another dad who's kind of going through the same things I'm going through. And that really, I mean, it actually means a lot to them, whether they outwardly express it or not. But these are three areas that really encourage you to think about and move forward in terms of where can we meet dads in any one of these areas? Okay, I mentioned and talked about this idea of positive father involvement. So building again off of this research, what does that actually look like? And so I think this statement at the top, while it's important for fathers to have time to be with their children, the most influential factor impacting positive father involvement is the quality of the relationship between father and child. And here are four simple areas. Positive involved fathers, they view their role as a co-parent rather than a helper. One of the comments in the chat was, oh, the supportive parent. Well, actually, they're both intricately valued and they want to view their role as, hey, I'm part of this too. They do have warm, loving relationships with their children, right? They including, appropriate physical touch, affection, kindness, respect, all those things. They're willing and able to adjust their involvement to meet the needs of the child. And then they engage in diverse forms of parenting, including play, father superpower, and then, of course, healthy and respectful discipline. So these are just some things that help us identify, well, what is it? And connect to this idea of being descriptive as opposed to prescriptive. And then there are three aspects to this, not as crucial, but sometimes helpful to see the distinction. So there's engagement, can be the direct one-on-one time. Accessibility is indirect involvement and availability of the father to the child. And then responsibility is attitude and commitment of a father to their child. And so engagement is obviously much more observable, whereas accessibility and responsibility not as observable and relate to more of the internal factors of the father. So again, I'm happy to share these slides for follow-up. And as we transition, so this is the reality of most of the organizations we serve are predominantly, female staffed. I referenced the one organization we were meeting with recently. They have a male staff and they feel great and they want to be able to capitalize and maximize on it. But not every organization has that opportunity. And sometimes there's hesitation, there's uncertainty, I'm not a male, so can I effectively work with dads? I think this is a normal question. And I think that's why we want to address it. And the way we address it is I'm just going to share a brief story and obviously embarrassment with my photograph with my hat there. But this is three women who work in the Anishinaabe Aski Nation Family Wellbeing Program. Margaret on the left, she is the one who I initially met when we ran our Dad Central conference back in 2021. And then so we just started, conversing and talking about, her programming, what was going on. And she was very passionate about father engagement across the whole Anishinaabe Aski Nation. And so this is 49 Indigenous communities throughout most of Northern Ontario. And so I've been working with them since 2021, and they have no male staff across, I think, any of their communities around the family wellbeing program. Yet they have been, I would say Margaret's been pretty relentless in working to bring father engagement and father-focused programming or men's wellness programs to her communities. This photo was taken in Sandy Lake, Ontario. They decided to bring me up to both share my personal story as well as share specific content on to help their fathers to be more engaged. And some of that content related to our Super Dad, Super Kids program and some of the guidance there. So why do I share the story? It's just that without any males, but with a desire and a passion and a willingness to take the learnings and experiences and begin applying them across their organization and into their different communities, they are making progress and seeing impacts across the communities they serve. In this case here, that room held, oh, I'd say probably could have held a lot more, but we had almost 30 Indigenous fathers in that room, for the majority of the day. That was pretty significant. So it can be done. And so in that process of working with them, really what I've tried to communicate are three simple best practices for engaging dads. That's what I wanted to share briefly here with you. And as I mentioned in the first part, really understanding and identifying and nurturing the strengths that fathers bring to parenting or to fatherhood is, I think, foundational. That strengths-based approach needs to be a lens upon which we view fathers. We want to help fathers feel included, valuable, and important to their child's development, primarily because we know that that's part of the crucial pieces that fathers care about. That's where they get satisfaction when they see their children begin to grow and develop. And when we connect their contributions, the importance of their presence, their their nurturing, their responsibility, their commitment to their child to directly to those child development outcomes, they begin to see and understand how important they truly are. And that's important. And finally, many of the fathers come from difficult backgrounds, lacking a relationship with their own father or a healthy model of what fatherhood really looks like. And so, with that internal desire, they just happen to catch themselves making mistakes or falling into the same patterns that they've experienced growing up. And so, what they really need is they need somebody who can, they don't believe in themselves, but they need somebody who can believe in them. Now, that may sound very simplistic, but there's often a story that I tell that's built off of research. Um, there's a research study that was done in Stanford or in California back in the 60s, and it was around school teachers. And so the way that this research was done is that teachers were given test results for their students and said, hey, here's your list of students based on the test results. They're on the verge of becoming like, it's an intellectual boom. They're kind of like your top students. The rest of these students are just average. And so they said, but here's the catch. You can't teach them any differently, right? You got to teach your whole class the exact same way. And we're going to watch you. We're going to monitor this. And so they did that for a year, observations, watch the teachers, and then they tested the class again. And sure enough, at the end of the year, the students who had the earlier test had indicated that they were going to be, off the charts in terms of intelligence and IQ. Sure enough, they tested off the charts, high IQ, etc. But here's the catch. Those students were selected at random. There was nothing different about those students than any of the other students in the class. So what happened? Well, the way that the research describes it is that the teacher's belief in those students that they were exceptional resulted in almost like micro minute by minute interaction differences. They tended to touch those students a little bit more. They tended to have a little bit more patience with those students. They tended to respond in a positive, constructive way to those students that were almost imperceptible to anyone observing. But the adding up of those low micro moments actually led to significant changes in the students. And what to me is so remarkable about this research is that it shows the power of actually believing in someone else's ability to achieve something. And so the more that we can actually bring that into how we interact and engage with others, specifically fathers, the more that perception can become reality. And so I think that's what's really powerful about that amazing research. So as I transition to maybe wrapping up most of the content here, I just want to ask a quick question. Um, what percentage of fathers do you believe say that working well together as a parenting team is very important or somewhat important to ensure the well-being of children? Go ahead, put your answers in the chat. 90, love it. 80, 75. James is over 90. Hannah says 80, 80, 83, 80 with a question mark, Jacqueline. 95% Amina. Okay, 90. All right, awesome. 100% Michael. Love it. You're close. Actually, the answer is 98%. And this is, again, built off of that same study I referenced with the 400 English-speaking fathers in Quebec, where we identified what really gets them satisfied with parenting. And so, I just wanted to, put that out there that, you know, normally I've started this before with test your fatherhood facts, and there's often some, here's what we believe, but here's what the data actually says. And so, again, this is more of an ode to that, but shifting to the back end is the main takeaway, I think, is that recognize that, you know, what our perceptions or beliefs about fathers may align with data, but sometimes they may not. And so just like, the idea of a coach, his first role is to sort of manage himself. And then number two, really get curious about who he's coaching. I want to encourage you to kind of take that same approach. So let's manage ourselves and just get more curious about fathers and begin bringing this open-ended, exploration and helping them discover approach. And I think that that can be a really valuable way to approach this challenge of helping fathers become more involved and more engaged in this process. So it's kind of my transition or recap today. I mean, there are three what we could call myths or false beliefs that sometimes come up in those form of those questions. And one is, oh, hey, we've done all that we can, right? But the reality is you might have been missing a piece around descriptive versus prescriptive. The second one is maybe the dads don't care because like we've done all that we can and we're just not seeing them engage. Like, well, what's the deal here? But reality, based on the research, dads actually do care deeply. But there's some gaps, especially around those 3 years: skills and confidence, the ability to balance the demands, and then the social and financial resources to provide that caring, stable home that is still quite ingrained in many fathers, just because it's the culture and the expectations you got to provide. Or maybe another one is that, hey, more primarily not male. So can we really support fathers? Well, the reality is that anyone can, especially when you think about those three ways to focus on fathers. So um, I think the real challenge is this sort of knowing, like and this is with everyone and everything, me, even with my kids, this idea of knowing versus doing. And knowing is definitely powerful, but it's not the same as doing. And most organizations I work with understand this importance of engaging fathers. The gap comes in how to apply these ideas consistently across your programming or across your staffing. And really, that's where the offer that I have is around this My Dad Matters certification. This is where it comes in because I think it really bridges the gap between the good intentions and real sustainable results. Um, and so wherever you're at in your organizations and whatever it is that you've been doing or are doing, I think there's tremendous value you can take away because when you go through the My Dad Matters, you're not just watching, I'll say, a training video. What you're actually doing is you're going through the process in real time. You actually are asked questions and you have to input and put your data and content into it so that when you come back, you're identifying the barriers. You're going to assess your current work with fathers. You're going to identify the barriers that are holding you back, and then you're going to learn best practices that are proven to work. And so then you'll build your own action plan tailored to your community. And then you finish with a certificate of completion and then that PDF printout of your plans. So it's actually going to give you, here's what we basically need to do next. Right. So giving you that how it really is, it's not theory, it's actually practical. And it leaves you with what I would call as a roadmap that you can start using right away. So why does it matter as well? Every time we miss a dad, a child misses out on support. Every time a program doesn't engage fathers, it does leave half of the parenting potential untapped. And really, I think the cost of disengagement is too high. It's for families, for kids, and for communities. And so I think what we really want to share is that the training helps you unlock that other half of parenting so that children grow up with the full benefit, or at least they get to begin see the benefits. Because I know that families are sometimes moving or sometimes not involved in programs in consistent long term, but every little bit helps. So for me, for us, we want to provide a special training offer. And so the regular price of the Minded Matters is 227, but today, if you sign up before September 30th, you'll get a 25% off. And that's only $170. And so to make it even more valuable, I'd love to, the first five organizations, they get a free 45-minute coaching consultation. And so that's really your chance to bring your action plan to the table. And then we can talk specifically about your situation and give some advice that might be very relevant to help you be able to move forward. For me, it's about equipping organizations with the tools and giving you a tangible support to make it stick. So, and as I've shared, you know, when dads feel empowered and engaged, ultimately families benefit, just like we summarized from the research that moms, dads, the whole family really benefits when we can see fathers engaged, strengthening families, strengthening communities. So, yeah, if you're ready, love to see you take that next step, enroll in the My Dad Matters. You're really going to build an action plan. Ultimately, the goal that we're trying to continue to do is both empower organizations and empower fathers and families to really be the strongest and healthiest they can be. Because we know there are so many challenges, so many things pulling at both you and your work and your organizations, as well as all the families and what they're facing sort of in today's world. So, anyways, just want to say thank you so much for staying engaged, for your commentary and questions. Hopefully, there's some questions there in the chat. And so I would love to answer any questions or provide any additional context or value for anyone who has them. So thank you so much, Sydney, and thank you for all those who have stayed.
Hey, I didn't see any additional questions as we were going, other than responses to your prompts. Um, but it's interesting, and certainly still feel free to plop a question in the chat for Drew or unmute yourself. But a question I have is when you talk about the three areas where we can think about support or engagement, do you see that there's a particular, like, is there one area over the others that perhaps CAPC and CPNP might particularly fit in terms of thinking about, providing that support?
Yeah, so one of the areas that has really, I think, jumped out over the last few months is the demands that fathers experience between work, home, community, wherever else. And so I'm continually hearing like I don't have enough time to
Mm.
balance all these different demands. Now, some of that might be because they don't have good time management organization skills, and some of those things are required, or some of it just might be that, there isn't enough of them to go around. So as CAPC, not knowing exactly what everyone's organizational capacity or what their mandates are, I'd say it's more challenging. I can just say that that has clearly come to the forefront as
Mhm.
pressures mount for fathers to be able to meet all these demands. I think the reality is they have the desire. I think there's more even expectation or sometimes pressure, like you got to be more involved, you got to do more things, and they want to, but it's how do you meet all those demands but also care for themselves. And so, which is the next part of that is, how do fathers even care for themselves so that they have the
Mhm.
energy to go back and care for others? That's a mom's constant challenge as
Yeah,
well. And
yeah.
so the reality is the more that fathers can, I think, and all parents can be sort of supported in that, okay, how do I care for or support myself to know what I need and how I can actually live that out, and then so that I can bring what I need to the others who are also relying on me in the way that they're pulling at me. But that to me is what's jumped out and what fathers.
Mhm.
We just did another survey of our email list. It's about 6,000 people on that email list, and one of the themes that I'm seeing is this theme of time pressure and
Mhm.
balancing the different demands.
Which,
Does that answer that
and
question for you, Cindy?
well, it brings me back to the thing that really stuck to me in your presentation was your story, your illustration of the power of believing in
Hmm.
the story of the teachers and the students, and what that belief in translated to in terms of interactions. You talked about sort of those micro gestures or
Yeah.
expressions that communicated a deep belief. And because I know as I was listening to you, I kept thinking about the importance of rapport and how we, as maybe mostly women offering programming to what has been mostly women, um, how we rely on that ability to engender rapport, like create trust between, and how can we do better at, you know, um, building that rapport with fathers. And I think that shift in attitude towards belief in can support us in that. Anyway, that's just my internal sort of ramblings around what you're saying and making meaning of it. Um, so I appreciate that very much. I just want to pause one more time. Does anybody want to unmute themselves or have a question they want to put in the chat?
I do have a
As,
question. It's
hey, hi,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Hi,
Thanks, Michelle.
Hi.
from Bridgeway Family Center. Okay, so it's a, I'm not sure. I don't know how to phrase it. If there is, if there's resistance for a mom to engage a dad and choosing to raise the child without any engagement from dad, do you have research to say this could be the impact? I don't know if it's like I don't know this particular situation, but a few of the clients in our centers have said they're better without dad. But do you have like research or resources available where it's not the positive dad necessarily, but the importance of having involvement with their child, whether it's positive or negative? Is there anything like that that can I don't know. I need to I feel like the like mom is choosing to do this, but I don't know what the factors are for it. Um,
Right.
she hasn't given the choice for dad to be involved.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's a really important question. Thank you for bringing that up, Michelle. So I point to this slide here, the infographics that we have. You know, it's right at the top, reinforces that positive father involvement is strongly associated. It's not just a call it like a short, it's strongly associated with positive outcomes for children. Can that focus? Now, the fact is it has to be positive. So to me, this research just slide, like what's the benefits to the children? And this isn't like exhaustive. This is just kind of like, okay, here are the highlights that we really think will grab people's attention. Infants of fathers whose interactions are sensitive, calm, less anxious score higher in mental development. If a father can provide that, that's huge for a child. It reduces depression in pre-adolescence and as kids age when you have a positive involved father. When you look at the explosion of mental health and anxiety and stress related disorders in youth, I mean, there's the perfect antidote right there, right? The quality of relationship between father and child appears to be the central factor in reducing challenging behaviors in early childhood. You want a child who's more compliant, responds well as continues on that path and won't. The research clearly shows this is what happens when you have a positive involved father. So to me, Michelle, I believe that this infographic, and I'm also happy to send it to Sydney and share it out broadly to anyone to have that. And we actually have infographics like this that you can buy, and they're poster size. You can put them up in your centers. This to me is that, but this is just knowledge.
Okay.
What you're dealing with is obviously significant pain or significant, past history. And the reality is that if that mother chooses that, that's her choice. And but maybe the next step is to, are there any positive male figures that you would like to
Yes,
see
and we did
involved
have that
in your child's life?
conversation. Yeah, we
Right?
did have that conversation.
Right.
It was just I think not giving someone a choice. Um, but again, she knows the factors more than I do, right? I can't assume that it is going to be okay.
Right.
I just wasn't sure if, because when I looked it up to see if, let's say, a dad had a negative, like wasn't consistent in the child's life,
Right.
it was obviously the opposite of everything on this slide, and the impact is a lot greater and a lot scarier. And I didn't want to provide her with something like that.
Okay.
But I think I can use this and change the dialogue. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Mhm. Anyone
Ma-
else?
Yeah.
Questions or comments? You did have your contact information up there. Of course,
Yeah.
dadcentral.ca is a quick and easy thing to remember. Lots of just amazing resources on that website as well as the ability to connect with Drew. Oh, Jane,
Hello.
hi.
I'm
Hi, Jane.
curious about, hi there, and thanks. The presentation was really great. I'm curious about uh, working with dads who are involved in unhealthy relationships with their partners, and maybe there's intimate partner violence, but they're still involved with the children,
Hmm.
and parenting, fathering groups with um, men who fit that kind of that grouping. Can you
Hmm.
talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so I think one of the programs that has been most popular or widely distributed, it's really grounded in solid research, is the Caring Dads program. I think that
Caring
was created
dads.
by someone at U of T. And so that's a program that I think is, one of the top as far as
Okay.
resources. I forget the researcher's name, but and the whole team that built that, but it's
Yeah.
been popular. And maybe anyone who's on the call who's familiar with it can also talk about that. But that to me has really become the standard because it's very focused on those with intimate partner violence
Right.
as part of the either their history or obviously the part of the current relationship and what's going on. So
Yeah. No, that's great. I'll take a look at that. Thanks for that.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Jane. Okay. Well, unless there's any other questions or comments, I want to again express my gratitude to you, Drew, for making time in your schedule to come and speak with us again. It's always lovely to have you here, and we really appreciate your knowledge and wisdom and your passion for this topic. And it's you and Dad Central are a really great resource to our projects for sure. And so thank you. And we look forward to the next time we get to spend time with you.
Thank you very much, Sandy. And thank you to all of you who are here and willing to engage with the conversation. And again,
Mhm.
I hope that you have taken at least one thing that you can apply in your context and it's added some value to you today. So,
Mhm.
and Tammy coming in with
Yeah.
a question.
Not a question. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. And I just wanted to let you know that when I do my prenatal classes, we do talk about Dad Central, and I
Okay.
mention your name and stuff, and we provide the contact information because a lot of times partners do come with moms for prenatal, which is wonderful.
Mhm.
So we also try to include them into the prenatal classes because typically it is always about mom and medical procedures and all that kind of stuff. So on our
Mhm.
post-care, we do offer a lot of stuff to do with dad, and you're up on the board. I just wanted to say.
That's cool.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think for me, and I think for those who are part of the Dad Central sort of steering committee and the volunteers who support it, our goal is really just to provide that resource and support, because the focus is how do we help children with the best possible outcomes we can. And that's, I think, been from my initial involvement. So we want to focus on, children and how they benefit. And we want to continue doing that and serving those who have that same passion. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Mhm. Cheers. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. And Drew offered to share his slides, so I will
Mhm.
send them out, and we will have the recording of this session on our archive on Web Connect. So if you want to watch it again or encourage a colleague, please do so. And with that, again, wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day, and I look forward to the next time we connect. Right?
Right.
Thanks. Thanks, Drew. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.